welcome back to Morning Trade Live. We have a lot of focus on right now. We're, about 12 minutes away from the opening bell. Big picture chat here. Don Luskin's with me, Chief Investment Officer at Trend Macro. Good to see you on this Friday. We've become a bit desensitized to some headlines. Lately, you are noting some of the moves we've had, and I think everybody's prepared for volatility. But lately, it's been a little more calm. What do you think is going on here with volatility?
Well, volatility happens when people panic. And when people panic, everyone who's going to sell sells. Then when everyone who's going to sell has sold, no one's left to sell. And that's what makes bottoms. So we have many ways to measure volatility. We can use the VIX volatility index. And what we just experienced in the last 2 weeks was basically tied for the fourth highest volatility experience in history. And that history goes, all the way back like 35 years. So, this was a big deal, big deal. But we need to do a reality check here. After all this volatility, where have we ended up year to date? Well, the S&P 500 is down something like, 8.5%, 10%, something like that. But if you take the Magnificent Seven out of the S&P 500, did you know that year to date, the S&P 493 is literally unchanged? It's like nothing has happened year to date. Now, if on New Year's Eve last year, we'd had a little game and we had to make sealed envelope predictions about what the S&P 500 would do if we knew that on April 25th, we'd have 145% tariffs against China and they'd retaliate, I know what I'd put in that envelope. I'd say the S&P would be down 75%. Okay, things aren't as bad as they feel.
Understood. And those tariffs have come down, and I think China's lowering too. Are they? They're playing a little bit of chicken here, but I do feel like there may be some mutual lowering happening. But as you know, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said this could take a couple of years. How do you feel about the tariffs now? There's talk about the courts moving in on the tariffs. Could they be overturned? Where do we stand on this, and what say you?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't intend to play one on TV with you this morning, but I do know that the authorizing statute, the IEEPA of 1977, that Trump has used to put on these tariffs, first time any president, including him, has ever used this statute to impose tariffs. That statute does not mention the word tariffs. And we've seen courts intervene to stop a lot of things President Biden did when Republicans were going to court, and we've seen them stop a lot of the things that Trump wants to do when Democrats are going to court. This is perfect low-hanging fruit for court intervention, and I think it could come at any second. But once again, I want to put this in its broader context. I am not a fan of tariffs, not because I think tariffs are a particularly bad policy, but because tariffs are just taxes. They're just import taxes. And when you add a tariff, you add a tax. And when you add a tax, that's a tax hike. And when you hike taxes, you are going to slow economic growth, period. No, not period. That's not the end of the story. There's a context. This administration is cutting taxes at the same time. The total of the tax cuts that are on the table now, so eliminating taxes on tips, eliminating taxes on overtime, eliminating taxes on Social Security receipts, raising the cap on the deductibility of state and local taxes. There's room for all that, plus making the 2017 tax cuts permanent in the reconciliation bill that's moving through the Congress right now. And those new tax cuts in dollar terms per year are bigger than the tax hikes represented by the tariffs. So do I love the tariffs? No, but I have to look at them in context. They are tax hikes, bad, but there are tax cuts, good, and the good is better than the bad.
Is that what Jay Powell's missing? President Trump has noted that Jay Powell should be cutting already, that he doesn't necessarily understand the big picture. Some of your thoughts on what Jay Powell may be getting right or wrong at this point? What do you think they should be doing there at the Fed?
Well, everybody panicked, the last time Jay Powell spoke, and he said that tariffs cause inflation and slow growth. I don't know why everybody particularly panicked about that. That's the third time he said exactly the same thing. He reads from the same little 3x5 cards every damn time. So, but for some reason, everyone lost their mind this time, including Trump. Now, we already know from the dots that they put up at the March FOMC that the Fed is going to cut rates 2 more times this year, at least. Okay, so they've already said they're going to do it. So, what are we worried about? And they virtually stopped quantitative tightening. They're down to non-reinvestment of their gigantic, multi-trillion-dollar treasury portfolio, just 5 billion a month. That's nothing. That's nothing. So they've already eased, and they've promised to ease more. So what is all this stuff even about? I tell you what it's about. It's just about the news cycle. It's about people who are just desperate to think something is going on and overinterpret everything. And 9/10 of the art of surviving as an investor is to know which 90% to tune out.
So you think it's noise? Some of the things he was saying was about inflation, that it may not be transient, that it may be here to stay for a while. He noted unemployment, that could rise. He definitely, crushed the markets that day that were doing pretty well on their own. And once he spoke, and he spoke for a long time, little by little, sort of knocked them down. So if it's all noise, what do you tell investors to do? As Chief Investment Officer here today, you tell folks for 2025 and 26, do this with your money. What?
You have to do what you always do when there's a panic. And this is a classic panic. When it looks worse than it is. So I've already given you the statistics about how the S&P 500 is basically unchanged year to date if you take the Magnificent Seven out. And we came into this year with some pretty rich prices. So anything that's happened this year, you don't even need headlines to explain it. There are 20% corrections like we've had in the broad S&P 500, including the Mag 7. That just happens all the time. That doesn't mean a recession is going to happen. You have 20% corrections in the stock market on a regular basis. And when that happens, everybody's saying, oh, there has to be a reason, there has to be a reason. Well, maybe the reason is just that auction markets, like the markets for stocks, just simply work this way. They're like the tides. They come in, they go out. There's a cycle of hope, greed, and fear. Any investor who's been in this business for more than 30 seconds knows that. So you have to keep your head when all around you are losing theirs. You have to listen to the things they're saying, look at the headlines they're looking at, reality check them, go to the sources, say, are these things real? So in the case of Jay Powell, did he really say anything new? No. Did he really say anything that didn't have 5 ifs, mays, and coulds in it? No. But did the market panic? Yes. Is that your opportunity? Yes. So all you have to do is keep your head and not follow the herd.
So you're on this buy the dips mentality, it sounds like, right? Would you buy dips?
This time, because there's no reason behind the dip. Now, there are other times when there are reasons. So when all the horrors of the great financial crisis started unfolding in mid-2007 and early 2008, and then in the summer of 2008, they made it official when Lehman failed. Well, you could just see the dominoes falling one after another, and you could do your homework and get inside the corruption in the banking system and the mortgage system and the home ownership system, and you could figure out, okay, this is real and it's just beginning. But you had to figure that out. You had to learn things back in 2007, 2008, 2009 that you probably didn't know going into it. So, does everybody remember that you had to learn for the first time what a CDO squared was? Okay, well, you didn't know that going in, but that turned out to be the toxic bomb that blew up Wall Street. You needed to know that. You needed to do your homework. There are other times when you get big fluctuations in markets and there's nothing going on, and you need to do your homework to find nothing the same way you need to do your homework to find something. It's doing your homework.
All right, Don, great to chat with you. Thank you so much. Don Luskin giving us some perspective this morning on some of those sell-offs.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a nice weekend. Chief Investment Officer at Trend Macro.